What's up, guys? Today we have our first place winner today at RNS's store regionals. This guy drove 6 hours last night from Fresno to San Diego. Please introduce yourself and what were you playing?
Hi, my name is Aaron Chan. I am from Fresno, and I just won a tournament with Luffy, a deck that I feel like a lot of people were really underrating and not expecting to do well in this format because it loses to Luffy.
All right, and let's just see what your deck is.
So, starting off with the list, I feel as if 3 Gatling is a perfect ratio. The number one reason why is not because of the trigger, it's because, so with the amount of bricks that you play, if you're on the Luffy Taro package, you have to play a minimum of 8 bricks. And with the ratios I have for top end, if I remember correctly, I was 14 to 17 no counter in the list. So I feel like 3 is perfect because it's searchable, it's useful, but anything above 3 gets stuck in your hand, and anything at 2, I feel like you don't really see it enough where it's going to matter in games. So I think 3 is probably like the perfect ratio of where I would keep it at.
Mm-hmm. And then did the trigger ever come up?
The trigger never came up. I don't feel as if you should ever trigger this card. It's better to discard it off effects if you're not going to use it. If you need the trigger to ramp the life in aggro matchups, then do it. Otherwise, you really should just hold on to it to your hand.
All right, cool.
Next is I play 2 when you're at sea, you fight pirates. So this card makes or breaks decks depending on what you play. The number one thing I will say about this card is that if you play cards such as Queen, if you play cards such as Bon Clay and Magellan, depending on your ratios, you don't want to play this card. This card ends up being bait, it ends up whiffing you, and it doesn't end up coming up. For me, however, I built my deck around this card, and so I felt as if that I would make as much consistent targets as possible. But I had to make a lot of cuts and sacrifices to do that. Number one thing is this. 2 is the perfect number because of 2 reasons. 1, the card gets stuck in your hand late game. You most likely will not be searching, so you don't really want to go anything higher. And 2, you only ever really want to play this card if you get an extra Dawn off, say for example, a Captain Kidd, or if you're going first early game. Otherwise, you don't really need to see this card unless it's coming out of life. Next is 4 of Usohachi.
From the starter deck.
From the starter deck. There's no explanation. It is searchable Sheep's Horn. It cheeses games. It is just dumb. This card is busted. I wish I could play 6 of it, but yeah, no, this card won me multiple games today where I just went face. They blocked it up, and I just Usohachi for game. It is so dumb. 4 Zoro Juro from the starter deck. I feel as if this card is really strong. I feel like a lot of people are underrating the use of the card. The number one thing I would see off a lot of players playing Luffy right now is that they will choose the new Sanji over the Zoro Juro as the target for Luffy. However, this card is much better into more matchups except Dofi. The reason being, the search can guarantee you a second Luffy Taro, which chaining 2 in most matchups will just automatically win you the game. And if not, it is searching you a 2K, it's searching you a counter, and it's digging your deck 5 deeper.
Yeah.
You typically will not whiff with this card, so I think getting it out of hand and onto the board is a lot better than getting the Sanji in matchups where it's going to get frozen by Bonnie or it's going to get killed by Lucci. 4 Onami. I initially was at 3 of this card. I thought this card was a little bit weak depending on the package I was playing, especially with Queen, but this card is busted. It is really good. It replaces itself, it filters your hand, it's summonable off Luffy Taro. It's a 4 cost, so it's that weird number where they can't just get a free removal on it. They have to use a removal spell most of the time. And so they end up having to respect Onami a lot more than you think. There's a lot of times where I had only 2K in my hand, but because Onami was on the board, they got scared because they saw the filter. Having filter in a deck that doesn't typically do that, it will mess up a lot of people's tempo plays and it will scare them. 3 Bon Clay. So this is the most cuttable card. If you do not like Bon Clay, do not play it. I see people try to force it into their lists. Do not play Bon Clay if you don't want to. The reason being is that this card is meant for Dofi only if you go first, or it's meant for Bonnie if they're consistently seeing top end. Otherwise, the card doesn't really have a lot of plays inside the deck outside of mainly being a 1K. There has been scenarios where I'm on 7 Dawn and I do Bon Clay, ramp a Dawn, and then do another 4-drop to go wider. But outside of that, Bond Clay is typically there just for super aggro matchups, which I was kind of teching for, like Zoro and Dofi, where you want an extra ramp, but you cannot take your leader skill. Otherwise, you get pushed down to 2 or 1 life way too early.
If you weren't to play Bon Clay, what would you play instead?
If I were not to play Bond Clay, I would up my ratios onto more 1Ks because I think having 1K slots are more important.
Okay.
So I would say either more blocker laws. I would probably say you can tech in maybe another 2K like Kamazo.
Yeah.
Or you can even consider queens. There's just a lot of stuff that you can do with the slot.
Okay.
2 blocker laws. I like blocker law because the card will always demand respect even if its existence is not there. It's a lot like a pudding for purple. But the reason why I like the card is that when you go first, if you go second, this card is able to be enabled on your second turn because you can ramp a Dawn, swing 6 with leader, and then they are 50-50 if you have law in hand, which forces them to pitch a 2K, which you're ripping 2Ks early, or it forces them to take it, and then you're able to rip 2 cards. You're still going to get them around the same cards in hand. They have to play around it. The only reason why I'm at 2 is that I don't think the card's that useful late game. I would rather have a blocker that filters me or something else.
Yeah.
But I think the card existing and punishing people who took life early, it helps out so many matchups that you would not believe.
Yeah. I legit fell for that combo.
Yeah. For Sanji, this card's just good. It's just busted. It draws you a card. If it sticks, it's constantly filtering your hand for free. They have to respect it. They have to clear it right away. If they don't, then typically you just get way too much value and it swings the tempo so far in your favor that there's just like no matchup. The number one reason why it's a 4-of is because it absolutely dumpsters Dofi. Dofi does not like this card on board, and if it spends a turn doing Raging Tiger or committing Dawn to clear it, then you've won because they're establishing less bodies and you should be able to out-tempo them from there. This card is kill me or lose. For Captain Kidd. So in Pluffy, I feel as if right now you have to choose one or the other between Queen and Eustace Captain Kidd. While both have their benefits, during my testing, I found that Queen never came up for me other than being a 1K. While Kidd, I was able to drop it early game without punishing myself, and the Dawn ramp matters. So there's going to be a lot of matchups where they send you second. You want the Dawn ramp because you're going to go from second to 4 Dawn, ramp to 5 drop Kidd, pass. Then you're going to be going to 7 Dawn. If you do the Luffy Taro with Kidd out, you do not have to leader ramp the following turn, which means you will stabilize at 9 Dawn, which will allow you to combo into Lin for free. And once you start maintaining that high Dawn, you automatically win games. Kidd is really good going second. I feel Kidd is strong. And because I play cards like the Blocker Law and the next card coming up, I feel as if Kidd combos with a lot of the deck that I'm playing right now.
Yeah.
And it's also searchable off the event that I'm playing as well. Same thing with the structure deck. 3 Magellan. Magellan, I feel as if it's a good card, and I feel as if it's mandatory, but you only need to see 1 a game. The only reason why you're playing Magellan is to offset Black, Yellow, Luffy, and Lucci from their top end, or to offset Bonnie from her top end. Outside of that, the card doesn't get a lot of value in use because by the time you drop it, most of the time they're either out aggroing your board or they're clearing your board. You only want the card's existence to demand respect and to offset curves, but once you get the 1 drop, that's it. The rest of them are gonna kind of be dead for hand. The other thing I will say is I see a lot of people over prioritize Magellan early game. If you are not going second, you do not want a Magellan until you start getting to high-end Dawn, or you're able to combo it with Kidd. Otherwise, I'd rather just hold on to it, wait, and offset their curve later on.
Do you search for this into like the Lucci matchups though? So like they can't out it, right? Because they just put themselves behind.
So the number one thing I'd say is that if you're going against Lucci, go second because you can ramp to 5 Dawn early game, Magellan on curve. And so then that sets them back to 4 Dawn, and that delays them 1 turn from Jack and 1 turn from Moria. You have to Jack or Moria on either turn.
Yeah.
They don't get both on the same curve.
And they can't really out this card because if they do, they're just more behind, right? -2 Dawn. Yeah. So.
If they use Brook, 6 cost Brook to out it, you're winning. For Frankinosu. So this card is really interesting. I was really on Kamazo because I thought Marshall DTH would be more present with all the Dofis around. But for me, I rather have a consistent 2K that is searchable off both the event and my Zorojiro rather than just having to rely on the event for a searchable 2K. I don't really like Frankie. I wish they print another better 2K. And I wish Kamazo was more searchable. But I think when we get to OP9, you can swap Frankinosu out for actually the Sachin Penguin.
Okay.
I think that's a lot better body. I think it's more useful.
Yeah.
But for now, I think Frankie is a pretty good 2K.
You never used it for the rush?
Never. For Blocker Sanji. There's nothing to say. This card is busted. It's just really strong. It combos if you use Kaido. It's a 6-cost blocker, so it forces an Ice Age or it forces Tempest Leader Swing. Because it's a 6-cost blocker that can combo off Luffy Taro if you Dawn minus. It's just a really strong body that people have to respect and they can't clear. The number one thing about it is that most of the time it's going to be a 2K, but that's fine because when you are Dawn minus 2, when you do play it out, it swings tempo so much in your favor because it's just going to get its value guaranteed. No matter what, they always have to do something about it.
Yeah.
And that's why I think it's just like, this is just going to be a mainstay in Luffy forever. For Luffy Taro. Luffy Taro, to me, is a really strong card, and it's the center of the deck. And my mindset is this. You want to play the version that favors into Luffy Taro because this card will win you games. My deck was built around finding this card with the 4 Zorojiros and the 2 events because my mindset was that since Luffy Taro wins or loses me games, it doesn't matter what spice or tech I throw into there. If I don't see this card, there's no point in me playing the match anyways.
Yeah.
I'm gonna lose. So I just played as consistent as possible to find this card into guaranteed combos. Dropping 2 in a matchup wins you games. 99% of matchups, you will automatically win because you're a 2.
Yeah.
This card is busted. I love Luffy Taro. 3 Linlin. So this card is specifically meant for Black Yellow Luffy and Dofi, but this card wins you games.
Okay.
The heal is the greatest thing ever. The reason being is that you can ramp aggressive early game to 9 Dawn to play Linlin on curve, and you do not get punished for that. You actually get rewarded. The number one thing about this card that people don't seem to understand is that because it heals one and it stuffs a body into life, against Doflamingo and even matchups like Bonnie, you are effectively healing 2 life. You're removing 2 swings off the board, and that swings tempo so heavily into your favor. Against Dofi, removing their body that's active and swinging out at the rested bodies makes it so that they just lose so much tempo, and if you clear the board once, you should be winning as Luffy. All you need to do is just get to that state where you can clear the board and just harass their hand.
Okay.
For Bonnie, if Carrot or Cavendish stick, you automatically lose the matchup. It does not matter. Because then they can play Kid on curve, then they can stun your Luffy Taros, or they can stun anything else that comes down. So you need Linlin as an immediate response to their 5 Dawn plays. If you do not have it, you typically tend to lose the matchup. And the last 2 cards of the deck are 2 Kaidos. Kaido is a very strong card and was a 4-0 in OP8, but as we go forward, Kaido is not really necessary. But because we do not have the Secret Rush to Luffy yet, Kaido's a decent replacement. The main reason why I play it as a 2-0 is that I only need to see 1 in a typical game for lethal, just holding it until the board state's prevalent enough for me to win. But otherwise, I'm mainly using it to pop a 5 cost, which is typically either a Rebecca or a blocker boa, and then swing out at board and maintain and get an advantage of board position. The number one thing I'll say about this card is that if you ever play against Black or you ever play against Bonnie, you want to clear the body and swing into the board and just have them dump their hand. Because 99% of the time they'll let it go, and then that means that you'll be ahead on board position for the rest of the game.
Yeah. They
have to respect Kaido. Yeah. And even if they don't respect Kaido, you then have to get a 50-50 between Kaido and Moonlands.
Yeah, and it's like super hard out.
Yep.
And then what are your thoughts on 10-drop Luffy?
So, my coach, shout out Guru, I probably said his name wrong. He has a video explaining about why you want to have certain cards and what your deck lists do. The number one thing about 10-drop Luffy is that it is only good in Black Yellow Luffy. In other matchups, you want your board more than you want the extra turn. And even then, this golden ratio of 5 top end is so much better than playing for the Luffy that I don't ever find time to play it. And if I do find time to play it, I was either already winning or I'm so far behind I'm gonna lose anyways. You don't ever typically get to play it. It's the same reason why I don't play cards as 7-drop Cade, same reason why I cut Queen. For me, my list was consistently meant of finding answers to every deck while being as consistent as possible. I minimized text to 3-ofs or 2-ofs, and I didn't want to prioritize cards that, even though that they're very strong in specific matchups, they're not generally strong in most.
Okay. And then would you make any changes? Because I know you're going to San Diego next week. Would you make any changes to your deck?
The main change I'd probably consider is cutting Bon Clay, but with San Diego going up, if I'm expecting a higher Dofi amount based on the results from this weekend, I would recommend swapping at least 2 Frankies to Kamazos and Bon Clays to probably either a 4th Magellan, depending on how many Lucci we get, or maybe just another 2K. Number one thing is that if Dofi's really going to be present next weekend, Kamazo is 100% the play. You should absolutely play Kamazo. But outside of that, there's not a lot of changes. I'm pretty happy with the list.
Any shoutouts?
I want to shout out my coach Guden. He helped me out. That's his Discord name. I'll probably make a comment on the bottom of the video linking his channel. I want to shout out the Fresno community. Every almost card shops in there. Bird Dog Comics, Clovis Cards and Comics, Health Points, just all the shops in Fresno that support me. And I want to support my friend Karar. Karar, which everyone knows as the Odin God, he was the one that initially pushed me into getting better at One Piece. He's the one that helped me break the barrier. And I've just continued to get better for 1, my sake, but 2, just to show that he really did believe in me. And I want to prove it to other people that I really can do it.
Well, thank you for the deck profile. Hope you do well next week in San Diego, and good luck.